Good evening, everyone. We're here early this evening to begin taking public comment on an ordinance that is proposed. But prior to that, we received correspondence from the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection late this afternoon. So I'm going to ask for a motion on this. First, a motion to suspend our rules.
So moved.
President Pro Tem DeLucia, second by Alderwoman Stacey Gould. On the motion to suspend, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion before us is to add to, under petitions and communications for this public hearing, the statement again from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. May I have such a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Alderwoman Stacey Gould and Alderman Singh. All those in favor of the motion to add this under petitions, please.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, at the beginning of this hearing, for purposes of the record, the city clerk is going to read the communication from the Commission on the City Plan, the Council of Governments, and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protections as we begin. Thank you. The floor is yours.
March 29, 2022, to the Honorable Mayor and Alderpersons of the Council of the City of Norwich, an ordinance amending Chapter 9 definitions, Section 9.2 defined terms of the zoning regulations to add manufacturing-related items, including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories. The Commission on the City Plan at its March 29, 2020 virtual special meeting reviewed and discussed the above referenced referral. Seated were Frank Manfredi, Kathy Wazika, and Michael Lahan. After careful consideration, the Commission voted unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation to amend Chapter 9 definitions, Sections 9.2, to add manufacturing-related terms, including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories to the City Council. Reason, a strategy in the 2013 POCD is to promote economic development in targeted zones. Respectfully submitted, Frank Manfredi, Chairman. The second one. Dear Mayor Nystrom, I am writing in response to an application to amend zoning regulations of the City of Norwich. The application was referred to this agency pursuant to Section 8(3)(b) of the Connecticut General Statutes. The proposed zoning regulation amendments seeks to add the following definitions to Chapter 9 of the zoning regulation: manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories. Based a review of the material provided, I have determined that the proposed zoning regulation amendments will have no negative intermunicipal impact. If you have any questions, please contact me. Samuel Alexander, planner. To the Norwich Planning Commission, subject, an ordinance amending Chapter 9 definitions, Section 9.2 defined terms of the zoning regulations to add manufacturing-related terms, including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories. Dear Commissioners, thank you for notifying this office of the proposed zoning regulation amendment noted above. Acting as the Commissioner's staff, our office has reviewed the amendment for consistency with the policies and standard of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act, and we find it to be consistent with the CCMA. Please be advised that this is consistency determination based on coastal management considerations only and does not necessarily reflect other municipal planning and zoning considerations which may apply. These comments are made in response to the review requirements contained in Section 22 small a 104E of the Connecticut General Statute, which requires that notification be sent to the Commissioner of the Energy and Environmental Protection at least 35 days prior to the commencement of the public hearing. Once notified, our office is responsible for reviewing the proposal consistency with the policies of Section 22A-92 and the criteria of Section 22A-102B of the CCMA. Should you have any further questions regarding this letter or any other coastal management or Long Island Sound matters, please feel to contact me. Emily Quisp, Environmental Analysis.
Thank you. Okay, we had a sign-up sheet for the beginning of this process, and the first person who did in fact sign up, first I must preface, the first group that I'm asking for are those who wish to speak in favor of this ordinance. If you are in opposition to this ordinance, you will be given ample time as well, but we'll begin with those seeking to speak in favor of this ordinance. That is our standard. And if I call your name and you're not in favor of it, you just let us know, please. Maximus Booley. Nice to see you again.
Hello. I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Cynthia Jean Mary? Oh, no, at the record, please. Please state your name and address, and if you could please do that again, just so we have it for the public record. Thank you.
My name is Maximus Baruch Booley. I live on 233 Prospect Street, and I am in favor of it.
Thank you.
Cynthia Jean Mary, 233 Prospect Street in Norwich. I'm in favor.
Thank you. Mrs. Deanna Rhodes?
Hi, I'm Deanna Rhodes. I'm the Director of Planning and Neighborhood Services for the City of Norwich, and my office is the office that prepared the amendments on behalf of the City Council, which is the zoning authority for the City of Norwich. I'm speaking in favor of this amendment. It clarifies the different uses for manufacturing in the city. When the zoning amendments were created in 2015, there's all different categories such as advanced manufacturing, food, precision, research and development. None of these had definitions to them. So when someone would come in and they would ask, they wanted to do a certain type of manufacturing, we would be like, well, is that really precision or is that advanced? So we did our research to determine what those particular definitions should be for each of these categories, because the categories are there and we want to make sure that we're putting people in the right locations. This regulation also allows for the food-based manufacturing and commercial cultivation, micro-cultivation, manufacturing, production of plant-based products and food or beverages to be permitted in any of those manufacturing zones. So it did allow for, to be able to allow for many uses that are interested in the City of Norwich to come in that are a plant-based business to be able to operate in all these different manufacturing areas. This does not change where the manufacturing is in the city. It's within the zones it's already at. This just clarifies the type, what these definitions are for the manufacturing. And then it has this overarching umbrella that says plant-based and food manufacturing can occur in those zones. So I am in favor of the clarification that this does for staff and for myself, and it helps with economic development for NCDC to better understand our regulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tara Booker, please.
She just left the room for a minute.
Okay. We can return to her. Those are the people who signed up. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time? Anyone else like to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time?
Good evening, everyone. Kevin Brown, Norwich Community Development Corporation. Just to reinforce the final point that Deanna made, that this adjustment to the ordinance really is just a clarification of standing zoning and standing ordinances, but makes it crystal clear for those that wish to come to town and do business in the emerging cannabis industry, so that they can then go to the state with full confidence that they are asking for a license in Norwich and that it will be authorized. I think that it is a good thing for the city. I've, at this podium, mentioned a few times the significant revenue from both a tax-based standpoint and a utility generation standpoint that we stand to see as this industry emerges. and Norwich should not be on the sidelines as this industry gets its start here in Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, would anyone else like to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time? Again, would anyone else like to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time? Again, would anyone else like to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time? I hear footsteps. Thank you. Okay, again, anyone else like to speak in favor of the ordinance at this time? Okay, at this time, we would open it up for discussion for anyone like to speak in opposition to the ordinance at this time. Again, anyone like to speak in opposition to this ordinance at this time? Again, if there's anyone like to speak in opposition to the ordinance at this time, seeing none. Okay, normally we would close the public hearing at this time, but that is not our intent. That is not what we put forth on our agendas this evening. We provided this earlier time for earlier comment because there's a large agenda this evening. So at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to suspend this public hearing until such time as we reopen the council meeting that begins at 7:30. And then we will move forward again and take public comment, both pro and con. Is there such a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay, President Pro Tem DeLucia and Alderwoman Berto. Is discussion on the motion to suspend until the regular meeting? Seeing none, let's make this a roll call this time, please.
Sorry. Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Berto? Yes. Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
A motion to suspend this public hearing to the meeting at 7:30 passes 7-0. Motion to have the council sit in recess until such time at 7:30. Alderwoman Gould, seconded by Alderwoman Berto. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Berto? Yes. Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0. We are in recess. Zip, 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 zip. Good evening, all. Would you all please stand? We're going to begin with the opening prayer led by Alderwoman Tracy Berto.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all of our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all of our deliberations. Give us the strength and the wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all of our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Alderman Swaranji Singh, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I would move for the adoption of the minutes for March 7th and the 21st of 2022. Is there such a motion, please? Alderman Wilson, seconded by Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion on the motion for adoption? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion on adoption passes 7-0.
Public hearing continued. An ordinance amending Chapter 9 definitions, Section 9.2, define terms of the zoning regulations and to add manufacturing-related terms, including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories.
Thank you. Previously, we began this public hearing at 6:30 p.m. this evening, and following commentary on pros or cons, we recessed the public hearing at this time. I would ask for a motion from the body to reopen the public hearing. Is there such a motion, please? Alderman Singh, second by Alderwoman Gould. Seeing no discussion, roll call on the motion to reopen the hearing.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, at this time, we will continue taking public comment. The ordinance that is before us dealing with the definition of manufacturing. We'll initiate this discussion now with those wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance. Again, if you had spoken earlier, this is the same public hearing, and all of these comments will be considered part of one body of record. Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time? Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time? Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of this ordinance at this time? Then is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this ordinance at this time? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the ordinance at this time? Third and final request, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the ordinance at this time? Seeing none, then I declare the public hearing to be closed. Thank you.
Second reading in action on the ordinance previously presented. An ordinance amending Chapter 9 definitions, Section 9.2, define terms of the zoning regulations to add manufacturing-related terms, including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories.
Thank you. Could I entertain a motion, please, to bring this ordinance to the floor? Alderwoman Gould, second. Alderwoman Berto. Is there a discussion? President Pro Tem.
My understanding, we are going to, or it is our intention to adopt this ordinance at this time?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Then I would just like to say that I am in support of this ordinance. I believe that it is appropriate and timely that we clarify these definitions before cannabis becomes a reality in our region and in our city. I applaud the work of staff to get the council and the city out in front of this instead of playing catch up like we have in the past. And I'm thankful that we are working as a team, both NCDC, or I should say all of us, NCDC, the council, staff, local governments, DEEP, and the state. And I'm very pleased with the work product that is before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further comment? Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the other big point to this is just the first step in a long process for us to do the work necessary for not only economic development, but better assisting our departments as they look to bring the best possible product of any business to the city of Norwich. So I think as we continue to do our work to be diligent, this is the process. We know that major projects will come before us if necessary. So, I'm pleased and with the work that we've done thus far and excited for what it is able to do to help the various departments and agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Alderman Singh?
Thank you. So my understanding is, of course, it's not limited to cannabis. Plant-based could be plant-based meat as well. So it opens the door for many manufacturers, many investors to understand that we are open to these concept of different plant-based, things that they are trying to do, any kind of manufacturing on those lines. So I think that shows intentions of our city that we are open, and I think that's a good first step, and we should work together to make sure people find their way to Norwich. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? I would simply add that this is not the last step where this council will be engaged with our staff, with NCDC. There are other steps that we will need to move forward with. A selection of a site for retail as well. We've provided one. It does open the opportunity for enhanced utility revenue, tax revenue, some jobs as well. Those are all positive things. We will also need to decide where we may limit the actual recreational use. For example, public parks. We're going to have to make those decisions. So I would say this is very good that we're working together, as was previously stated by our pro tem. And I would urge its adoption. Thank you. No further comment? Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
The ordinance is adopted on a 7-0 vote. Thank you.
Petitions and communication. Report from the Commission on the City Plan of the City of Norwich pursuant to an ordinance amending Chapter 9, definitions, Section 9.2, define terms of the zoning regulation to add manufactured related terms, including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories.
Thank you. Entertain a motion, please, to accept this communique. Alderwoman Berto, second by Alderwoman Gould. And just for the public record, anyone who turned in at 7:30, these communications were read into the public record at the beginning of the public hearing, which began at 6:30 p.m. this evening. Is there discussion on the motion to accept from the Commission on City Plan? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 2, report from Southeastern Council of Governments regarding the proposed text amendment to an ordinance amending Chapter 9, definitions, Section 9.2, define terms of the zoning regulations to add manufacturing-related terms, including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories.
Thank you. A motion, please, to accept this again. Alderwoman Gould, second by Alderman Singh. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Woman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 3, report from Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to an ordinance amending Chapter 9, definitions, Section 9.2, define terms of zoning regulations to add manufacturing, related terms including manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, food manufacturing, precision manufacturing, research and development, and research laboratories.
Motion at this time to receive the report from Deep. Alderwoman Gould, second by Alderman Singh. Is there discussion? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
City Manager's report, his proposed budget and American Rescue Plan proposal, fiscal year 22-23.
Good evening, John. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'm going to stand up. Sometimes it's less boring if you're standing up, you're a moving target, so.
Never boring.
Well, this is the manager's proposed budget for 22-23. This is my 7th budget for the city of Norwich, and there were some particular challenges this year to how we were going to integrate substantial federal funding into the regular budget. So what you have tonight is the budget document, and you also have a ancillary report that has the ARPA funding for 2022, the summary of project requests and proposals. And our plan is to do these parallel to each other, and when we have a public hearing, we'll hopefully permit comments on ARPA at the same time we have comments on the budget. And during the budget hearings for the various departments, the department heads can discuss their operating budget, should also discuss their capital budget, and then finally, if they have ARPA funds, they can discuss that. So we're going to sandwich it all together with that. So, okay. Our priorities are really the same each year. Obviously, we want to minimize impact on taxpayers. We're always trying to collaborate and sharing of resources among departments, maintain the city's infrastructure, and provide for some increase in education funding. I think we've met these 4 priorities this year pretty well. Let's talk about some of the revenue factors. We have state grants. That's have been our predominant form of revenue. Federal grants in the past have been secondary, but obviously with the pandemic and the ARP money, it's taken front and center for us the last year, and will take going forward another year or 2. We'll talk a little bit about grantless growth, and then we'll talk a little bit about other revenues. First, the Alliance District funding. That is proposed to the Norwich Public Schools to the level of $9.1 million for 2022-23. Now, it's important to know this $9.1 million is not part of the general fund and is part of their budget. They must have a plan approved by the State Department of Education on this, but it doesn't go through the City Council's budgetary process. Revenue sharing. The state intends to reduce the motor vehicle tax cap from 45 mils down to 29 mils and reimburse the cities and towns for the loss of revenue. That's about a 35% decrease in revenue from the automobile tax, but it will be reimbursed by the state to the tune of about $3 million in this year. That's significant because depending on what type of automobiles you have, if you own automobiles, especially if you own high-value used cars or late-model cars. The reduction of 35% might offset some of the increases in the property tax. In fact, it might offset all of it. And of course, if you don't have real estate and you just have you pay the auto tax, then you would see a reduction in your taxes for next year. The next one we have is an increase of revenue sharing from what I call the NIP tax. NIPS, and I learned that word. I didn't know what it was before. I used to call it miniature bottles, for lack of a better word, but NIPS are the miniature bottles of alcohol that are sold in stores, and unfortunately they become very prevalent on our waste stream, on the street, and so on. The state has a program where they will be funding the sale of NIPS and returning those funds to the local government. We will be receiving our first funds from the NIP tax this April, and we'll have a better idea of what the revenue is that we can expect. We think it's fairly substantial, anywhere from 30 to 60,000 possibly. Someone says that we are, and I don't know this for a fact, we'll see it with the revenue, that there's a big market for nip bottles in Norwich. Well, we'll see. We will use those funds to offset replacing a position that was eliminated in the budget about 4 years ago, which will be the environmental coordinator for Public Works. This person coordinates recycling, which is more important now than ever since the recycling contracts are so volatile. We used to make quite a bit of money on disposing of our recycling. There have been parts of the market now which we actually have to pay to get rid of recycling, which is kind of antithetical of what it should be. But we'll see how that goes as we proceed. Finally, the non-alliance education cost sharing and other state formula grants are unchanged at this point. We have to remember that this is the governor's budget at this point. The state legislature won't approve the budget till May. I would imagine that the governor's budget is probably a template. There might be increases to that. I've been watching it closely. Let's talk a little bit about federal grants. In addition to our federal block grants, which are not part of the budget, we have the Federal American Rescue Plan. We will be receiving a total of $28.8 million to the general city operations. 4.7 have been allocated from last year's allocation, which was in May, for half. And at this point, when you see the chart that and the book that we have provided to the City Council, you'll see that we have recommended at this point $10.8 million. So there's still about over $3 million left that is not allocated. Some of the highlights are $500,000 to offset general fund costs. That's something that ARPA is specifically funded for. About $1.5 million to fund 9 positions for 18 months, and we can gradually implement those positions longer than that. But some of these positions are positions that were discussed during the goal-setting session, like the grants writer and other positions that were discussed during the goal-setting session. I think it's hopeful that the grant writer will pay dividends much more than the salary of the grants writer. And as I said before, $3.3 million is unallocated. Let's look at the grant list growth. The collectible grand list for 21-22 was a little over $2 billion. We've had an increase in real estate values of about 1%. That's about 17.6 million. We had a decrease in personal property values of about $7.8 million, or minus 0.39%. We had an increase in motor vehicles, which was the biggest driver of the increase, of 52 million. That's a percentage increase of 2.6%. And then increase in exemptions and change in the collection rate was a minus 14 million, or about 0.27%. When you total all that up, it's a new grand list of $2.048 billion, or an increase of about 2.3%, almost 2.4%, which is a good rate of growth. Let's talk about other revenues. The payment from the Norwich Public Utility revenue is fairly stable. It will decrease by about $71,000, but with an allocation of $8.5 million, the $71,000 is a small part of that. So it's very stable from last year to this year. There's $3.3 million allocated to the CCD, which is the same amount as this fiscal year. We are projecting an increase in interest income to $450,000. You might remember that a few years ago, we were receiving in excess of $1 million in investment interest income. Last year, we had budgeted around 250 or so. This year, we project to go up to 450. Now, that's a double-edged sword. It's good that we'll get more revenue. It's bad for why it's happening. It's happening because inflation is up, and then interest rates are up to coincide with the inflationary pressures. And you'll see how inflation does affect some of our budget later on in our discussion. We've projected some increases for conveyance tax, building permits, and many other revenues as the country emerges from the pandemic. Salary and fringes. We have wage increases of about 500,000, and these increases and the addition of 2 positions in Public Works. As I said before, the environmental compliance coordinator will be hopefully funded by the NIPS tax. If it's not totally funded by that, then the general fund would pay the difference. We're trying to gain efficiency in staffing, equipment, and materials by putting maintenance under a single division. Right now, we have 2 divisions. We have the Parks Division, which is under Public Works, and then we have the Recreation Maintenance Division, which is under the Department of Human Services, the Recreation Department. Ostensibly, these 2 divisions do very similar work and should be consolidated. I know we've talked about this a number of years, so this is the year we're going to move it. This is subject to union negotiations since the 2 groups are on different bargaining groups. It makes it more complex, but we think we can go forward with it. Health insurance. That's up substantially this year, but I think it's not a long-term problem. We have budgeted about a 20% increase. We think that there's a bulge in the reimbursement for this year because of the individuals that held back on taking elective surgery, items like that they held off during the pandemic because they didn't want to go to the hospital, they didn't want to go to the doctor's office. So there was a lot of pent-up demand that has come during 21, 22. Now, once that pent-up demand is satisfied, then it should be more of a straight line. So we're hoping that this is a one-time aberration and that it will go down. But that increase is about $800,000. Now, some of the good news is that pension and OPEB costs have decreased by about $480,000. Part of that, or most of that, is because of the pension obligation bonds that the city approved in referendum last year, and that the city successfully sold those bonds in February at a favorable interest rate. Okay. Other expenditures. Debt service decreases by $350, and you may wonder, how could the debt service decrease by $350 if we just borrowed $145 million for pension bonds? What we did with the pension bonds is we distributed the cost to each fringe benefit account within the departments to reflect the true cost of their fringe benefit cost. So we're paying the debt service on the $145 million over 25 years, but we're prorating it to each department. Other than that, the debt service did go down by $350,000. Fuel and utilities, we have a budgeted increase of about $190,000. We're suffering the same price increases that citizens are receiving. And then we put a higher amount in contingency by about $180,000 as a hedge against further increases in inflationary costs. We don't know exactly where it's going to go. We're hoping that it peaked and maybe it will go down, but the world is a volatile place and the commodities are just as volatile. Strategies for developing the budget. One is looking at the economic development and other initiatives. Obviously, the best way to grow the grand list is through economic development work. The mayor and city council work on that all the time, and NCDC's primary responsibility is development of economic opportunities. So that's certainly a core element of the budget process. Secondly, we have a responsibility to maintain infrastructure. We're doing that by budgeting $2.7 million in capital project funds. That's the allocation that comes from the ordinance establishing the capital replacement fund. We have increased education funding. And finally, the goal is to minimize impact on taxpayers. We have put an additional $25,000 in the NCDC contribution to the budget. That budget was $150, and we're recommending increasing it to $175. That number is in the mayor's budget, I believe. The city has a lot of capital needs. We have emphasis on really 4 core areas. One is our buildings. 2 is our public safety and fire safety equipment and replacements. 3 is police cruises, and 4 is road and other infrastructure improvements. Next. Let's just talk about funding for education. This line is the city's line of increases over the last 10 years, 12 years. The top line is education. So you see, although they have not received the amount of monies requested each year, their curve is still steeper than the general fund non-education contribution. Next. Proposed taxpayer impact. The proposed 22-23 budget for general fund would be 42.8 mils. It was adopted last year at 41.9. That's a change of 0.89 or a percent change of about 2%. The town consolidated district would actually decrease by 0.02%. City consolidated district goes up by about 6.3%. Then you see the various lines. The proposed CCD is 49.95. The adopted last year was 48.64. It's an increase of about 2.6%. General fund and TCD is about 2%, well below inflation. Finally, a summary of appropriations. You can see, I think that what we should look at is the last column. General operations is an increase of 4.2%. Debt service is decreased about 9%. General government increased 3.1%. Capital improvements through the mandate of increasing it based on the percentage of the operating account is up about 3%. Education is proposed to be about a 900,000 increase or about 1%. So total general fund increase in appropriations is about 1.8%. The CCD fire district actually is reduced by 0.5, and the TCD is reduced by 3.5. Norwich Public Utilities is a $5 million increase, or about a 5.4%. You'll be, the budget hearing for the NPU is next week. A lot of their increase is caused by increase in the commodities they buy, electricity, gas, et cetera. Next. I'm going to talk very briefly about the ARPA funding. If you read across, we have the project name, a brief description, the entity or location of it, the request, and then the manager's proposal. Now, as I've said, we have about 3.3 million unallocated. So if the council decides that they want to reallocate funds, we not only could do it from within here, we can also do it from the 3.3 million that's unallocated. So we still have some flexibility as we go along. I reluctantly did not fund the Heritage Triangle at this point. That was a request for $500,000. Cedar Woods Reserve, Avalonia Land Conservatory is requested $300,000. I did not fund that. At this point, the Slater Memorial Museum roof restoration, I propose that ARPA contribute $500,000 towards the restoration of the roof. Then we have a bunch of economic development initiatives, mostly through NCDC. It's a continuation of the code correction and vanilla box programs. It has the limitations that was promulgated by the council last year of 300 limit for any one project and 400,000 allocated to small businesses. And these locations are various, not only downtown, but anywhere in the city, and it's another $2 million. There's a possibility that the Read and Use deal will go through. We're very optimistic to make the deal work. ARPA would be funding about $300,000 out of the ARPA account to make this work. What would happen there is the Read and Use would have about 17 market rate apartments that would be built there. That's a long time coming if it works. The next is Hale Mill renovation. We would be insisting in putting their final deal together. It's about $400,000 from ARPA. It would be a boutique, 151-room hotel, supporting tourism, travel, et cetera. It certainly fits within the criteria for ARP. We have a small number, $50,000, for a Yale study of Lower Broadway for streetscapes and other amenities, so we could eliminate the rather ugly Jersey barriers that are in front of Billy Wilson's and make it something more permanent. Next, we have some community projects. TVCCA asked if they can replace some of their commissary equipment. They requested 20, and I proposed 20. The St. Vincent de Paul installation is in need of building a walk-in cooler on a site that's adjacent to their property. You might recall that last year the city granted an easement so they could put their pad there. This would be about $90,000. As you know, St. Vincent de Paul was crucial in providing meals in the city in the time of need during COVID. A small amount for assistance to victims of sexual violence, $2,000. Uncas Leap, this would complete the project, $1.4 million. Then we're attacking drainage very aggressively. Various locations, including Bliss Place, Bacchus Hospital Drainage Basin, $600,000, and improvements to Ox Hill Brook tributary, another $500,000. This would be Mahan Drive, Sachem Plains, Leffingwell, Bliss Place, Julian. Then we're looking at taking that Yale study and implementing it. This would be the first phase of that at $150,000 for Lower Broadway. And finally, so we don't have to budget for this, we would allocate $250,000 for the statistical revaluation that the city must do every 5 years. So instead of having to pay that in the general fund, we pay it out of ARP funds. The requested for various funding for caseworkers and stuff. I won't read all these. They are in the separate document. The City Council has hard copies of this as well as the budget, and citizens can obtain these numbers from the city's webpage. The budget is posted there. Next page. We have some police and fire expenditures, public safety camera system, requested $750, I proposed $350. The purchase of 7 Lucas devices. These are the automatic chest compression system that takes the place of CPR manually. Very impressive device. $152,000 that will have, every department would have at least one. Then we have recreation, Fitzgerald Field, Armstrong tennis courts would have 200, and the Armstrong tennis courts would be completed in the parking lot and LED lighting on the courts for $195,000. And finally, to offset part of the 22-23 budget, $500,000. That'd be from me. So the funding on the bottom is $10.8 million. There is about 14 plus, so that's where you get the 3.3 difference. Next. This is the famous average house that we use each year. This is in the CCD home district. You'll note that from this line to this line is education. That takes the biggest chunk of CCD, because the CCD pays for Much of the fire services, that's the second largest bunch, and then it's subdivided out from there. Our next hearings are going to be tomorrow. We'll be concentrating on public safety. It starts at 6 o'clock, and we'll be doing all the volunteer fire departments, plus the Norwich Fire and Emergency Management and Police. Then on the 11th, we have Human Services, Public Works, Planning, and Public Schools. And on the 12th, Otis Library and Public Utilities. On the 14th, City Clerk, City Manager, Mayor, Human Resources, Finance, Treasurer, Assessor, and then at 7:30, the first public hearing. Then on May 2nd, the council will consider adoption of the council preliminary budget. A week later, we would have the second budget hearing, this time on the council's proposed budget. And then sometime in early June, the council meeting would meet to finalize the budget. And that concludes my overview for tonight. A little more than a half an hour. But questions?
John, could you speak, and I'll get right to our other members. The education budget, you talked about the 1%, but could you combine the discussion of last year's budget?
Yes.
The 1.3 million and the carryover that is actually being proposed?
Yes. Last year, as you know, there was a lively discussion about the $1.3 million that was going to be granted to the Board of Education. And there was a discussion whether it would go directly to them or come or not come. We said that it would go directly to them and they wouldn't need an additional $1.3 million. That's what happened. The Board of Ed stood up to the plate at that point and said that they would sequester the $1.3 million. So the $1.3 million that was in dispute was not spent, or at least at this point has not been spent, and will be available at year end. So the base that the Board of Ed is talking about includes the 1.3, but that 1.3 wasn't spent. So in essence, it's a base that has an additional 1.3 million in it. So I didn't count that, but that is additional, in essence, additional funding because they couldn't spend it this year. That would be about 2.5% if we count the 1.3 million.
Thank you. With 3 new members on the council, they weren't party to those discussions.
Right.
Thank you for putting
That's
that
right.
in.
There were 3 that would not have been
Yeah,
part of that.
thank you. President Pro Tem, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, you said that, and we saw the numbers, that there's a little over $3 million left in the ARPA 2 allocation. How much money is left or unallocated from the first round of ARPA funding?
It's all allocated at this point. Whether it's all going to be spent is another question. So,
And certainly anything that doesn't get spent, we could reallocate, but it has all been allocated.
yes.
So right now, it is just the $3.13 million that can either be allocated by the council or, well, in one way or another.
Right. So there's the flexibility of the 3 million. There's still some outstanding projects that didn't get through in the time limit that the city may want to consider. Plus, of course, you may want to reallocate some of the recommendations I made. So there could be a number of different changes in it. But where we are now is about 3.3 and unallocated.
Okay, my second question is, the mill rate increase has caught my attention first, as it always does. Would it be feasible that there could be no mill rate increase in this budget over last year's budget? I mean, I know that we could force it. I mean,
Sure.
by vote of the council, we
Right.
can force it. But I'm asking you, as in your opinion as city manager, would it be feasible for us to entertain the idea that there should be no mill rate increase this year?
It would be difficult based on some of the fixed costs that have gone up, especially the health insurance, offset somewhat by pension. As we saw in the chart, we really only went up about, if you exclude the health benefits, we went up about 1.5%. So that would be everything else that's in the budget. It would be difficult. Of course, if the council directed me to do it, we will work hard to do such an item.
And my last question is really more of an observation. On the one slide where it looked at the taxpayer input impacts, if I read that correctly, the taxation in the CCD is increasing by a little over 5 points, while in the TCD it is decreasing by a little over 6 points. So that's if I read that correctly, that's a 12-point swing, right?
That's the chart.
So am I understanding that correctly? The percent change, right, in the TCD is 5.41, right, decrease, 6.31 increase in the CCD, right? So rough math, that's almost 12% swing.
Right.
Is there,
Alderman DeLucia, but if I might.
yeah, I was just going to say, is there some, can we kind of
It might be best to focus on these last two columns, which adds the change in the general fund with the changes in the 2 fire districts. So when you add them together, the increase in the combined general fund plus TCD increase is 2.05%, and the combined general fund plus CCD increases 2.69%.
okay, so those are better numbers to look at. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's helpful, but no less concerning because we are a cat's whisker away from 50 mils in the CCD again in a fairly prosperous time in the city, and with all of this ARPA money that we have to spend on projects that, granted, and excuse me, I'll take it down a notch. So I'll try to find a better way to say it. I know that the ARPA money is COVID recovery. And we know that the ARPA money is to do things that the taxpayers could never afford to do in the city. But at the same time, I also believe that a component of the ARPA money can also be to do things that we would otherwise have to ask the taxpayers to do, as long as they fit the guidelines of the legislation. And with that in mind, nearly $30 million, it troubles me that we're a skosh away from 50 mils in the CCD, and even in the TCD, we're up almost a mil change in, if I'm reading that chart correctly, there as well, right? And that troubles me that, revenues are looking good. I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic, and yet we're in pretty good fiscal shape, and yet taxes are still going up. It's, we've got, and I will say that is not an attack on either of you, never is, but I'm going to say, from my seat as one of 7, this council has some work to do because I am not in love with anything I see on that chart. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Again, we will be holding public meetings at all departments and public hearings. But we welcome your comments this evening. Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question is kind of how I was in the fall, adamant about more community input as far as the ARPA requests or allocation recommendations. I guess my hope is that even though we have public hearings and whatnot in between that phase, that we would do some type of community outreach between now and us deciding on those recommendations to get a better input. I can't expect during this time for every single resident, one, to come to a council meeting to express their thoughts on it. And as I said it before, I don't mind rolling up my sleeves, but I would hope that we can do something to get some additional voices and opinions on that sector of the budget. So I think that's my first big piece, that I'm hoping that we can do a little bit more outreach when it comes to people's voices on that part. My second thing is, in this budget, those numbers also reflect the ARPA positions and whatnot that you've included in your budget.
So the increases in these slides about the appropriations, they don't include positions that are funded by ARPA funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Singh?
I just have a quick one. So it does mention the slide number 15, cap on motor vehicle taxes decreases from 45 to 29, right? So we are kind of taking that hit in the budget, but it will be reimbursed by the state. So does that reimbursement include in these figures?
Yes, yeah,
Yes, the
they're
revenue
included in the grant estimates.
Okay, thank you.
I always get a little worried, I didn't say it during the presentation, but sometimes the state has a history of starting a program where they reimburse, and then when they have fiscal pressure at the state level, that the reimbursement goes away, and I would worry about that. It's a large amount that we would have to come up with $3 million.
Almost 3 million, yep, okay.
I would only add to John's last comment. The state proposed this for revenue sharing, whatever you want to call it. In the past, same reduction in the allocation of what mill could be placed on the car, and then they reneged on the state reimbursing the cities and towns. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to continue to talk to our elected officials in Hartford to make sure that doesn't happen in their budget process. We really need them. If this is what they're going to adopt, or if it's going to be a different version of municipal relief for cities and towns, and I've heard discussion, there's some legislators who don't like this car tax cap. They'd rather do something more direct, particularly for those property owners in the community, more permanency, if you will, not just tied to the car you own the given year. But we really do need to communicate with them very strongly.
So if
Please.
I'm correct, actually, so this change, we don't know if it's for 1 year, 2 year, for how long, for good?
It's year to year.
It's year to year, right?
This motor
So
vehicle
there
cap
should
is-
be enough cushion added, you know, if next year we have to take a hit on that.
No, you would have to, they would have to be reappropriated by the state each year at this point. They haven't made a long-term commitment. We hope they will.
Thank you. Is there further discussion, members of council? Thank you very much, John. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate everything you put into it, the details, everything.
Citizen comment on resolutions.
I declare citizen comment on resolutions open this evening. There are 6 resolutions in total. Anyone wishing to speak or comment on any of them or all of them, we have 2 people that did sign up on the public hearing for resolutions. Maximus Booley is the first person. Again, for the record, please state your name and address.
My name is Maximus Bully. I live on 233 Prospect Street, and I have no comment.
Thank you. Cynthia Jean Mary?
Cynthia G. Mary, 233 Prospect Street. I'm going to hold my comments until later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone would like to speak on any of the 6 resolutions before us? This is your time, please, either in favor or against these resolutions. Yes, please.
Deanna Rhodes, Director of Planning and Neighborhood Services. I just want to speak on 2 of the resolutions. I will start with number 5, relative to authorizing an auction to abutters of 14 Grove Place. There is a new property owner that has purchased property in this vicinity, and it's really important for this redevelopment of that property to be able to be considered for purchasing that city property. So I would support that goes to auction as soon as possible to the abutters, so we can have that property move along and take that out of our municipal hands. It's property that's not necessarily valuable to us, and property we have to continue to maintain. Number 2, I would just ask that I'm not quite sure what the capital project for completion at Ockham Fire Department is. Just that they work closely with the planning department because of the location within the special flood hazard area. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to speak to resolutions before us, please?
Good evening, Kevin Brown, Norwich Community Development Corporation. I'd just like to address the council regarding the resolution on supporting the RAISE grant that we're going to submit. I ask for your support. As you all know, this is in further development of Business Park North. It's a sixth item on your agenda, and it is for a $24 million, roughly $24 million federal grant application to improve the infrastructure at exit 18 off of I-395, which would allow for better ingress and egress for the industrial park that is also being supported by a federal grant for another $17 million. So all told, these 2 grants that we are, these 2 grant applications we're submitting to the federal government, sum total about $42 million to help us move what I've been calling the last buildable acre in Norwich, the last real greenfield ground-up development. That'll create construction jobs, it'll create permanent direct and indirect employment out of that facility. And of course, it is at least in part in support of the growing offshore wind industry. I had a conference today where it was confirmed that the real slack in the rope, so to speak, for this offshore wind industry cluster is the fact that all the component parts are being shipped from overseas. And so this build-out of Business Park North is intended to provide an opportunity in the United States, but certainly here in Connecticut and certainly here in Norwich, so that some of the manufacture of those pieces and parts, the Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers, as they're called, come to Norwich, build in the business park, create jobs here, shorten those supply lines, and of course, with what we've all experienced over the last year, shorten, or I should say reduce the risk of long-haul supply chain issues. So I appreciate you taking it under consideration and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to speak to the council on resolutions before us? Yeah, would anyone else like to address the council on resolutions before us? Third request, does anyone like to address the council on any of the 6 resolutions before us on tonight's agenda? Seeing no other comment, I declare this hearing closed. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
New resolutions number 1, relative to setting the first and second public hearings on the budget for fiscal year 2022-23 and the manager's proposed American Rescue Plan Act projects.
This time I'd ask for a motion, please, to move this resolution forward. Alderman Wilson, second by Alderwoman Berto. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderwoman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Berto? Yes. Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 2, relative to reallocate funds from the capital projects for completion of the Aachen Fire Station improvements and purchase of turnout gear.
Motion, please bring it forward. Alderman Gould, Alderwoman Tracy Berto, please. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 3, relative to the adding of the name Janice Stewart to the Rose City Senior Center sign.
At this time, I'd ask for a motion to move this resolution forward and refer it to our Monuments Committee, please. President Pro Tem DeLucia, second by Alderwoman Gould. Their discussion. Yes, President Pro Tem.
So will we wait to act further on this until we hear back from the Monuments Committee, or?
Yes.
So this will reappear on our agenda as a final action once we hear from the Monuments Committee?
Yes, that is the practice of something of this nature. Yes. And the family has been notified.
Yeah. Okay, nothing further then, thank you.
Thank you. Is there further comment on the motion to refer? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
I'm sorry. He was asking if we wanted to establish a certain date for it to return, thereby giving notice to the Monuments Committee to schedule a meeting. With the indulgence of the council, my apologies, do you think that's a better preference at this time?
I think it's okay, Monument Committee.
President Pro Tem.
I have no objection to modifying the motion to refer. Do we have a date from the Monuments Committee that?
Hold on, please, hold on 1 minute. They're on an as scheduled,
Right.
as needed.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. A friendly recommendation that we request that the action be taken in time for the council to act on this at the first meeting in May. Is that timely enough?
They're seeing if their
Yeah, looking
schedules
for it.
Oh,
can accommodate that.
while we wait, Alderman Wilson.
I was just thinking, I'm going to suggest maybe because of the time constraint within possibly meeting, the second meeting in May.
Yeah, we can have it back by May 16th.
Of May.
Yeah, May 16th meeting, we
Okay.
can have the decision by then.
Okay, then with the indulgence of the council, if each person would withdraw their vote as they began, and the floor is now open again to amend the resolution before us for a date certain, May 16th. Is there such an amendment offered? Alderwoman Gould, second. Alderman Singh. Is the discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call on the motion to amend.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion to amend to May 16th passes on the resolution as amended. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
It's 7-0.
Resolution as amended passes 7-0. Thank you.
Number 4, relative to authorizing City Manager John Salamone to execute and deliver an extension of a lease agreement with the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation pertaining to lease of state land on Route 32 and Route 82 at West Thames Street and east of the west branch of the Yannick River.
Thank you. Is there a motion, please, to bring this forward? Alderman Wilson, second by Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 5, relative to authorize an auction to abutters for 14 Grove Place.
Motion, please, to bring it to the floor. Alderwoman Gould, second Alderwoman Berto. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 6, relative to seeking U.S. Department of Transportation Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, RAISE, grant funding for upgrading to Interstate I-395 exit ramp 18, ramps, and construction of new public industrial access road.
May I have a motion, please, to bring it to the floor? Alderman Singh, second Alderwoman Berto. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
New business ordinance. An ordinance relative to the appropriation for the City of Norwich and the City and Town Consolidation District of said city for the fiscal year 2022-23.
At this time, I'd ask for a motion to raise this ordinance, waive the full text and reading at this time, and to schedule, in this case, final action for this, either on June 6th or the 13th, depending on basically the adoption of the state budget. Sometimes we need that extra week to understand where the actual final numbers will fall. Is there such a motion, please?
So moved.
President Pro Tem, second by Alderman Singh. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please. Yep, I'm sorry, someone have a hand up?
Yeah.
Oh, my apologies.
At this time, with this new ordinance, do we have to schedule the public hearing?
That was the first one.
That was the first one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. It's a little more complicated, this first meeting with the budget. Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 2, an ordinance concerning the tax levies on the list of October 1st, 2021.
Motion at this time to waive the full reading and text of this ordinance and to schedule, again, final action either June 6th or the 13th, again, depending on the adoption of the state budget. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
So moved by the Pro Tem, Alderman DeLucia, and seconded by Alderman Singh. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn by Alderwoman Stacy Gould. Is there a second? Alderman Singh. Seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Berto?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Neuendorf?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned. Thank you all.